trying to we've been trying to bring Glauco to Madison now for, is it about a year and a half? And then the pandemic happened. So I'm both really pleased that he was willing to do a Zoom talk and really sorry that we don't get to go out to dinner afterwards because it's not the same. But on the other hand, the timing couldn't be better because Brazil is obviously an incredibly important, I don't know if case is the right word, but if what's happening in anywhere with COVID matters, it matters in Brazil to all of us. So it's an incredible honor to have Glauco here, who many of you remember from when he was a visiting professor here, a Tinker professor. He then spent some time doing innovation. I don't remember the title that you had, Glauco, but working with innovation, particularly related to deep sea oil and what to do with the new reserves. And given Brazilian politics, it will not come as a shock that he's back in academia now. So we couldn't have a better person for this talk. So Glauco, we're delighted to have you. Thank you. This meeting is being recorded, and Glauco's okay with that. If you're not okay with a question, you can put it, if you don't want to say a question publicly, you can put it in the chat.
Okay. It's with me?
Yeah, okay.
Hello? May I start?
Yes, please, thank you.
Well, you know, I'd like to thank your invitation. Alberto is a good friend of mine, and I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you, Gay. I'm more than happy to be here to talk to you. I miss you, my friends. I miss Madison. You know, I had a very good time. You recall my presentation about deep oil extraction and the future of Brazil. You know, in 2010, when I was there at Madison, I really thought that Brazil had a future, you know, but now I am in doubt. But it's okay, no problem at all, you know. My point is, you know, I'm gonna talk a little bit about Brazil, the whole situation here, which is not a very good one. We face difficult times, and we have a very hectic, erratic government, you know, and the situation is very awful, basically, and mainly to the most vulnerable people who live in the vulnerable neighborhoods, in vulnerable cities, you know. The situation is not good. We have a lack of vaccines. We have a very disorientation. We have a very disoriented strategy from the government. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then we can chat, we can exchange some ideas, and maybe I could be of any help to understand at least a little bit about my country. Well, you know, the first, just to give you a picture, this is from today, you know, it's a real time. You know, we have 192 countries, and the total amount of deaths, of infected people, millions of people infected all over the world. And then we have Brazil with 13 million people infected by now. Just to remind you, you know, testing here was not pervasive, and it was not, there was not a massification of testing, not even of tracking and tracing in Brazil. But we have still have 13 million of people with proof of infection. And then we have global deaths, almost 3 million people all over the world. And this is the record, you know, for Brazil is 365,000 deaths for the time being. It's a whole tragedy. It's a complete tragedy. Well, last week we had at least three very strong opinions, of reference to Brazil, coming from three different sources. They are different, but the three sources, they explore just one question of Brazil has become a kind of global threat. We had a Washington Post editorial, a Guardian editorial, and a very strong manifest from researchers in France. A very strong one with more than 5,000 signatures, trying to defend Brazilian research, Brazilian science, and Brazilian people at the end. The situation is quite sad because, just to give you an idea, I work with the Global Health Index. It's an index elaborated by Johns Hopkins University. The index tries to measure the capacity of any country to resist to pandemics. And just to give you an idea, when we think in terms of prevention of pathogens, Brazil occupied, at least in 2019, Brazil ranked in 16th position. When we refer to early detection and reporting for epidemics, Brazil ranked 12th and 9th when the subject was the rapid response to pandemics or epidemics. In general, Brazil occupied the 22nd position. There is, I don't know, it's more than 190 countries surveyed. It was a very strong position. I don't know, I know you know Brazil. Brazil has a very unique public health system. It's quite different from the US. And it's a universal system. And that's why, Brazil was in a very good position, at least in 2019, to face dangerous things like epidemics or pandemic. We had a very good performance. We had a very good performance facing HIV, in the past, MERS, SARS, Zika, dengue, lots of epidemics, or pandemics in the case of HIV, and but now we are failing, and that's the most important quiz, why we are failing, and the question is, the question is, the Brazilian biodiversity added to a very huge and differentiated population, created a situation of high risk for the generation of new variants of the virus, meaning that Brazil can be the source, of new viruses, that can run the world, recreating problems that many countries had to overcome again and again. That's the main point, because Brazil is a global threat. We had the Amazon, we had very different biomes all over the country, and a very differentiated population, and lots of virus coming from the wildlife, coming from the way agriculture, extensive agriculture in Brazil, extensive cattle creation, they invade forests, they devastate forests, and then they expose people to new viruses, coming from the wildlife. That's the origin of coronavirus, as you know better than myself. My point is, we had just last week, we had 1/3 of all daily COVID deaths. They were here in Brazil, although Brazil has only 2.7% of the world population. 1/3 of the daily COVID deaths. Last week, I'm not talking about the past. Lethality in Brazil has risen from 2% in December to 3% in last month. There is the pandemic is escalating right now, and the new that's the point, the main point, the new Brazilian strains, the new Brazilian variants of the virus have raised concerns in neighboring countries in the South, in South America, and all over the world. Because Brazilians, they travel, they go everywhere when they can. Well, who is to blame? The coronavirus? Well, could be, but but I don't think it's a good answer. Governors, because it's the way our president say every day, governors, they want to keep people in their houses, distant from other people, and they are responsible for the whole situation. That's the way he works. He transfer responsibility to others. That's the way. Well, he's quite similar to Trump. You have a very good school in the US. The third answer is mayors. That's the same point, or even the population that does not take care of itself. I don't think so. There are good answers. Maybe everyone has a share of responsibility, but I want to put, to attribute the great responsibility to a guy called Jair Bolsonaro. It's the central government. He has power, he has means, he has money, to guide and to coordinate and to unify the Brazilian people to face pandemics. But it's not what he is doing. He's doing just the reverse. To explain, we can talk about incompetence or negationism or ignorance. Well, the three are present in our president's speech, but I think that we can go further. Actually, the main approach that the federal government use to face the pandemics, they bet in the herd immunity through contagion. That's the main point, They put all their eggs in one basket, and the basket was, there is no vaccine, there is no remedies, there is no antivirals, there is nothing. That's the way our government reasoned last year, you know. And the only thing we have to do is to let the virus spread all over the country, and then we are going to infect people, and with infection they are going to have immunity against the virus. That's the main message, you know. And the result, was tragic. It's a tragedy, because in doing so, in thinking so, you know, he was against masks. He was against the physical distancing. He promotes, as in the States, in the United States, he promoted drugs without proof of effectiveness. He segregated universities and science. And most important, at least for the present days, you know, he resisted to negotiate vaccines. He attacked very strongly the Chinese vaccines, you know, called the vaccines Communavax from communists, you know. That's the way he talked to people, you know. The vaccine from China was a kind of communist invention, you know, and refused. In the first moment, the federal government reject the idea of buying vaccines from the Chinese. And he put, the only action was to negotiate with AstraZeneca, Oxford BioNTech vaccine, you know. And even with Pfizer, Pfizer insisted to put vaccines in Brazil, and the president denounced Pfizer, saying that this Pfizer was trying to profit from the situation and elevate the prices, you know, lots of things. And although there was no proof of effectiveness of the vaccine, they are trying to put a very, it's very expensive. And it's not worthwhile to buy vaccines from AstraZeneca and Oxford. We are paying the cost right now in lives all over the country, because we don't have vaccine. There is a queue to, even for the health assistants, doctors, nurses, we don't have vaccine for them. And they are in the front line, they are every day, facing the disease together with people infected people, But there is no vaccine even for them, And right now we are vaccinating people around 70 years. We start vaccinating people with 70 years. It's the first shot, It's just the first shot. And because there was an effort from the São Paulo governor, and he struck a deal with the Chinese Sinovac, which is the company which created the vaccine, And he struck a deal. There is a very strong biotech institute here in the state of São Paulo, and together the institute, Butantan Institute, together with Chinese, they produce vaccines. The Brazilian factories, they receive the if I don't know the name in English, is the most important ingredient inside the vaccine, the active ingredient. And then the Brazilian factories, they produce vaccines here inside the Butantan Institute. And the other big institute is a federal one, is Fiocruz. It's very, very, with a very strong reputation. But Fiocruz was allowed to sign a deal just with AstraZeneca, and then AstraZeneca is resisting to deliver vaccines to Brazil because they have lots of solicitations. They have lots of people, of countries, asking them for vaccines, and they don't have vaccines to deliver to Brazil. Of course, there is a very strong tug of war between countries like Brazil, emergent countries, poor countries, and big and rich countries. They have the most important chunk of vaccines produced all over the world, and the rest of the world, they don't have enough vaccines to vaccinate people. But that's a second problem. And just to if we take this positioning of our president, the way he runs our resistance to pandemic, the way erratic way, I guess, it's a false strategy. This has led to avoidable deaths of hundreds, thousands of citizens. That's the main point. That's my focus. That's the most important idea of my presentation. We can talk about incompetence. We can talk about ignorance, but the main question is there is a logic. There is a rationale. There is, in the actions coming from the government, meaning that the federal government followed a logic that gave tragic results for the country. We can follow this. Is crystal clear. We can follow every day. The decisions. There is legal decisions. There is political decisions. There is informal decisions. But every day we have decisions that give us, the strength to say that the government follow a logic that gave a tragic results. That's the main point of my talk. We know that governments fail. I don't know. Just to give you, the tragedy could be much worse, because of the action of our universal health system. We reduce the impact of a wrong strategy. Although our health system was very demobilized, very. They are depressed, because the orientation coming from the government put them down. That's the most important point. Right now, the health system is reaching a very critical point. The intensive care all over the world, private hospitals included, very good private hospitals in São Paulo, for example, the intensive care are on the verge of collapse. They are operating at 95-97% of their capacity, or lots of public hospitals, they exploded their capacity. Meaning that people are are waiting for intensive care beds. Sometimes they don't have even oxygen. You know, we had people dying because of lack of oxygen. Could you imagine, you know, in a country like Brazil, you know, and people, you know, they film, you know, they have photos about people dying, you know, suffocating with no oxygen because the virus attacks the lungs, you know. Well, you know, that's a medical point, you know. It's true that governments fail, you know, but we in Brazil have a very real government that does not respect life. You know, it's a basic idea for humanity. You know, it's a very starting point to civilization. You know, the government doesn't respect life. The result is, you know, there is no vaccine. The Ministry of Health were demobilized. Technicians were displaced. You know, they put in their places people who know nothing about health. Basically, people coming from the military, you know, in the Ministry of Health. That's the result. The result is a complete tragedy, and Brazil is bleeding today. That's the point, you know. The federal government, no, you know, states, you know, Brazil, the Brazilian federalism, as you know, has states all over the country, kind of province, like in the US, you know, you have states. Well, few governors, they try to put in place measures to stop the virus. The result was, you know, Bolsonaro, they fired them. There was a very strong opposition from Bolsonaro. They fired them and put things at the federal court, you know, saying that the governors, they had no power to confine people in their homes. You know, that's the first step. There was a lawsuit. You know, he filed a lawsuit against at least three governors. You know, governors that want to suspend commercial activities and reduce people circulation. You know, he put the judiciary against the governors. You know, can you think of Brazil? You know, Brazil is totally fragmented. You know, totally fragmented. The virus looks like, you know, there is not a menace. You know, it seems that the virus, we don't have to be together against the virus. You know, that's the main point. And one of the most important result was that starvation is a reality. You know, if you go to, I'm going to show you, if you go to most vulnerable neighborhoods, you know, the favelas, the slums, you know, here in Brazil, starvation is a commonplace. You know, is a very strong reality, and due to the neglect of the presidential support to low-income families. Just to remember, you know, the financial support in Portuguese is ajuda emergencial, you know, it's a very transitory support, you know, ceased in December 2020. And millions of people need to resume work because they had to work. They had to make their lives, you know. That's the point. New aid program has been announced, but with a very reduced amount of money, around $25 a month. You know, that's the most important program. It's a $25 program, you know, per month. You know, it's totally insufficient. You know, it's that's the money delivered to people right now. And at the same time, Bolsonaro, in the middle of this entire situation, Bolsonaro attacks permanently democracy. You know, he manages to give a coup, to call the army, you know, to put the tanks and generals and soldiers in the streets, denouncing the opposition, different parties, you know, saying that they are only inconsequent leftists, you know. It's, you know, it's every day, you know, it's a very, and at the same time, he's a very strong source of misinformation, you know, fake news. You know, he talks just, you know, I in a moment we thought that Bolsonaro was just replicating Trump, but I think that he went far from Trump, you know, because maybe because the Brazilian institutions, they are weaker than the US institutions. Maybe the political parties in Brazil, they are most fragmented, and the opposition is most fragmented. I don't know, you know, the real explanation. But the reality is, you know, Bolsonaro is a very strong source of permanent attacks against democracy. You know? Well, you know, this is a Cell. Cell is a very important journal, scientific journal. They put the discussion around we live in a pandemic era, you know. But just to recall you, we live as well in a very unequal world, you know, together with the pandemic. You know? And meaning that, you know, pandemic has exacerbated all the Brazilian inequalities. You know, a disease in Switzerland or in France or in the US, the disease performance is quite different in advanced countries and in a very unequal country like Brazil, because the disease is not just a disease, you know. There is a mixture with social issues, mainly with pandemics, you know. We have to take care about the economy, you have to take care about the salaries, the people must work. You know, there is a very strong fusion between social and medical questions, you know, health questions, when the subject is a pandemic. And as you know, inequalities in Brazil, inequalities are very high, you know. Remember that during Lula's term, inequality, we had a very strong reduction in inequality in Brazil. But since 2015, inequality in Brazil is growing, is improving, and we almost reached the same level before Lula's first election, in 2003. There is a regression of years, extreme poverty, that's a very, very good report coming from the World Bank, delivered in January. Extreme poverty grows basically in emerging countries. That's different because in some advanced countries, extreme poverty has been reduced. But in emerging countries, extreme poverty grew. There is a very strong impact on labor market. High educated people, they are much more likely to keep their jobs. Small businesses are at risk of bankruptcy. That's the real tragedy if you think in terms of long term. Poor students in Brazil, they have 25% less classes than the rich students. I'm not talking, in São Paulo, in the Northeast. No, inside São Paulo, inside the big cities, inside everywhere, there is a very strong mixture between rich and poor students. Students that have infrastructure, Wi-Fi, computers. They can follow classes. They are in good schools. But even in university, my university is the most important university of the country. It's University of São Paulo. But I have very, very difficulties, to give class because sometimes people the students they only have a smartphone. Can you know what I'm saying? Because it's very difficult to follow a class, 1 hour class, 2 hour class, through a smartphone. It's almost impossible. I'm not talking about infrastructure, but if you have just a smartphone, you can follow class. You can focus. You can pay attention and follow the reasoning of your professor. And unemployment reached 15% of the total workforce in Brazil. Remind you, Brazil has around half of the workforce in the informal sector. And we are talking about 15% of the half of the country. If you put them together, you have 15% of unemployment. It's a very high level. And at the same time, you have half of our workforce, working in the informal sector, which has been which is bleeding, because there is not enough people circulating, people are getting sick, that there are lots of obstacles, for them. This is, sorry. That's the map I showed you about. That shows you the world situation of vaccines. The green countries, they receive at least a very important portion of the vaccines from the big pharma. But the countries in red, they didn't receive any dose of vaccine, and there is a very unequal situation between countries, very different. A country like Canada, for example, they have at least 3 times more vaccines they they need, because they are afraid, that companies, they will not respect the deal they struck, meaning that they bought much more vaccines they need, But the global situation is not, the picture is not a good one. That's the point. If we go to, this is a work done by a network that I coordinate, which is the Solidarity Research Network, oriented to produce good information, good data, to make public policies better. We created this network in March last year. In March last year, just in the beginning, and we have these days more than 100 researchers working for free. Producing a weekly bulletin, with very reliable information, and we discuss these informations with the governors, with the mayors. We participate in debates in the Federal Congress, in the state Congress, with the congressmen, and at the same time we discuss with municipal councils. We are orienting people. We are orienting public guys. They policymakers. And mayors. They don't have reliable information. There is a kind of we are running blind in terms of information in Brazil, because the Ministry of Health, they doesn't deliver any good information. I don't know if you know, but the press, the TV channels, they are together and they collect data to announce to the people, because the government doesn't deliver any good information. And when the government delivers, people suspect they are manipulated, they are fabricated, But the above picture is a journal, a newspaper article, Folha de São Paulo, which is the most important paper in Brazil. We signed a deal with them, and then the Solidarity Network publishes its research is there. Every week, they cover. I'm going to show you. And on our right, you have an idea about our bulletin, and there is a bulletin in English. If you go through our website, we release our bulletins in English as well, and we have a very strong collection. We have 28 bulletins, with very good research. We are not just social scientists, sociologists or political science. We are together with doctors, with physicists, with engineers, people, not just from my university, but we have people from other different universities and different states, in Minas Gerais, Rio Grande do Sul, different states in all over Brazil, working for free, to offer good data and good information about the pandemic, And one of the most important bulletin, show that 25% of Brazilian workers are vulnerable, either because they have fragile bonds or because they have, or because of sectoral impacts, bonds with essential sectors, because essential, meaning non-essential sectors, meaning that non-essential sectors of the economy, they, in different states, they were obliged to stop functioning, and that decision put lots of people, around 23 million people, in a position of vulnerability. 81% of the workforce, of the Brazilian workforce, meaning more than 75 million people, experience some new type of vulnerability due to COVID. And basically, workers in non-essential sectors form they compound the group of the extremely vulnerable. When we go to Black women, they are traditionally, historically, they are they are part of the most vulnerable group in Brazil. Black people, Black men, and Black women. But the pandemics, revealed a new type of we call the new vulnerable. They are white men, and they work in non-essential sectors, meaning that they were fired, or they had their salaries cut by half or by 8%. They don't have a place to work. They can't leave home to make their lives, And that's why we call them new vulnerable, And just to recall, historically, vulnerable workers are more vulnerable than the new vulnerable. And Black women, they are the most sector, the most vulnerable sector in the Brazilian population. Well, just to, I'm almost finishing. Science. I mean, hard science. They are very important. They gave us the vaccine in less than 1 year, but science alone is not enough. That's my point. I'll talk a bit about that, but that's my point. Because to face a pandemic is not enough to fight against the pathogen itself. We need to work with different areas. We need to deal with physical distance. We need to keep the economy working. We need modeling and forecasting. We need data. We need to control transportation policies. My point is, pandemics are biological, but at the same time, pandemic is a social phenomenon. That's the main idea that guides my reasoning. We have, if you think in terms of social science in pandemic, there is a group of new subjects. They are all the problems, but they regain a kind of new energy. You know, they are renewed by the pandemic. You know, I'm talking about violence, discrimination, racism. You know, they appeared. You know, they flourish in all over the society. And when we have a very divided society like the Brazilian, like Brazil, they are very strong. See, my neighborhood, which is a middle class neighborhood, you know, affluent people live here, you know, in my neighborhood compared to the rest of Brazil. But people say when you talk to them, well, why are you not using mask, for example, you know? And the answer is, well, because COVID-19 is a disease for poor people, you know, it's not for us. They say, it's, you know, they say that things to us, you know. Remember crisis, deep crisis, like the pandemic we are living in, you know, they release the good good sentiments, you know, but at the same time they release the worst of societies, you know. There is a combination, you know, and it's quite sad, you know. That's why I think that social sciences are more necessary than ever, you know, to face pandemics, to face the next extreme events. They face climate change. They face the risk of technologies. You know, we need to put them together. That's, I guess, is the most important lesson, most important legacy that the pandemic is going to leave us. You know, we need to work together with different disciplines. You know, the idea that any particular discipline is able to explain what is going on in terms of a pandemic is totally wrong. You know, we need different visions, different traditions, different methodologies. You know, to understand the pandemic. You know, to understand the way pandemic works. You know, and the way pandemic affects people's lives. You know, and as well to maintain a little maintain hopes that a safer, a less unequal, more just, and more sustainable world is possible. You know, that's why we work. That's why we do research. That's why we think about the world, and we want to get the public policies better. You know, to help. My country and the world to live better, you know, than they are living, you know. I don't know. That's all I have. Just to finish, you know, that's a small vision about the research network against COVID. We want to improve the quality of public policy, you know. During the pandemics, just to give you an idea that this is our coordination committee. You know, we have people from medical school, we have people from psychology, from economy, different people from different institutions, and as well we have consultants from abroad. We have people from Texas A&M University, Tulane University. They work together with us, you know, people from University of California, Riverside. You know, they are professors, and they read our papers, they read our research, and they help us to make our researches better. You know, and we have a very special relationship with Oxford University and with MIT included. You know, people, they help us every day, when we have doubts, when we need specific information, this is beautiful, this is very, very beautiful for us. And on our right side, we have our sponsors. I don't know if you know, but we have a very strong sponsors. Until now, we don't have any public money. We receive money from companies or from non-profit institutions, like SEBRAP, the Center for Brazilian Research, the Ethos Institute from the Hospital Albert Einstein, which is the most important of the country, COVID Radar is a kind of coalition formed by companies to face pandemic. Ford Foundation gave us money. There is a very strong association to support things like us. This is quite important. I'm very proud about my university because the University of São Paulo, have more than 250 groups, formed by will. They want to help. They designed ventilators. They designed kit to do tests. And groups like ours, doing econometry, doing modeling, collecting good information and processing good information. More than 250 groups only in my university. For the first time in Brazil, you in the US, you are used to see in different universities, a family gave money, to build a new lab, or a company gave an amount of money to a university. Well, but in Brazil, that is not our tradition, And for the first time in our history, big companies, they put money not in their research, for innovation, but they built some funds, to fund research, basic research sometimes. One of the biggest private bank in Brazil, Itaú, gave 1 billion reais, much money, to basic research in Brazil. It's the first time. That there is, of course, there is a kind of, you look at the situation and you feel how dangerous is the situation for the country. But at the same time, the way the government is dealing with the pandemic, it's causing a kind of strong reaction. That's good. This is our first bulletin. In March last year. This we had an article in Folha de São Paulo, it's an important newspaper, of one page. There's this different articles in the media, in the TV, in Globo, the TV networks. Well, that's it. That's what I'm sorry if I talk too much, but that's it. I hope I gave you an idea about Brazil. I hope I hope you are not as depressed as I am a little bit. So.
Well, actually, I was very impressed that you ended on a more cheerful note. I was wondering how you were going to do that.